Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry back with another custom card review. This time we're going to be talking about your guys' cards, your submissions for the 6 cost challenge. That could be either a 6 cost card or a card with 6 costs in its text. We're going to get to the winners shortly, but really quick, we got the next week's challenge, which is going to be the keyword lose. Losing, however you want to use it, as long as it's kind of revolving around that idea that you're losing something when this card hits the field or just has that keyword in its text, okay? So a quick example that's actively in the game is Martyr, and she might actually be the only example, but I think it's an interesting space to explore. We've seen cards where if you're winning, like Adam Warlock, then you get a certain payoff. I think it's a lot more challenging to find a card that works, that is balanced, that is effective, if you are losing a location or losing something. I don't know, get creative. I want to see what you guys come up with. And the theme is going to be Marvel. So if you want to submit a card, you can join the Berryverse Discord, link in the description below, create a custom card using that link, and post one submission in the weekly challenge channel. If you post another one, just go back and delete the older one. Make sure you only have one in there. And then if you do choose to post a card, you have a chance to win a season pass. And this time around, it was Nero Charuzo that won the season pass with the Ancient One custom card. That is a 6/2 on reveal, move all cards to other random locations. Pretty cool. I do like that big effect of moving a bunch of cards to random spots. We almost had that in Annihilus. The original Data Mine Annihilus did that effect, which is kind of neat. Little fun tidbit there. But congrats, Neo. I'll hit you up with the in the Discord with your season pass for January. And let's get to this week's winners. All right, so kicking it off with my card, I chose Triton as my character with the ability and stat line of 3/3 ongoing +2 power for each 6 cost card in your opponent's hand. So I didn't really have a reason to put this character with this ability. I just wanted to use both. Triton is a member of the Deep 6, Namor's Deep 6. I think that would be a really cool season some point in time for Marvel Snap with Stingray and Tiger Shark, maybe even some Namor skins. But anyways, regardless, I think this would be a very interesting ability because it's essentially giving you information. You don't get you have Triton out there, right? He's just a 3/3, and then all of a sudden on turn 4, turn 5, he's now a 3/5. It's like, I got you. I know. And that's such a good Spidey point moment, emote moment, where it's like, oh, you just drew your 6 cost card. And if you kind of read and assess what your opponent is doing, what kind of deck they're using, you might be able to deduce what card that might be, which could really help you out later in the game. Even if they end up playing it, and yeah, Triton would lose that +2 power, that information is what's really crucial and what's really helpful. There's a few other ways that we can actually add 6 cost cards to our opponent's hand, and that's Baron Mordo. Let's go some Baron Mordo synergy. You take a really cheap card, you make it a 6 cost. They do not want to play that on turn 6, so that's just going to stay in their hand, and Triton sticks as a 3/5. That's great. And if they have more 6 cost cards in their hand, well, it's going to be even a higher power Triton. Kind of punishes those greedy decks that bring a lot of 6 cost cards. There's been stuff in the past like Sandman Ramp decks, or just like Lockjaw greedy decks where they have a bunch of high power, high cost cards. Well, if they bring too many of those to the table, all of a sudden Triton becomes a really good counter against those. And he can still be countered himself with like Enchantress, Rogue, and these sorts of things. So I think he's still quite vulnerable and doesn't do too much, can't get too crazy in the power scaling department. It could actually just stay as a 3/3, never get that 3/5 if your opponent's like running a bounce list that doesn't have any 6 cost cards, right? But at least going into that final turn, you'll know if they have one or not. And that could be really helpful to lead you to winning the game. Another thing is that he's a 3 cost, so he's going to be helped out by Silver Surfer. And if we want to break our opponent's hand so that they, I don't know, let's say they have Arnim Zola in hand. They want to play that card real bad. But we use Leech on turn 5. And now Arnim Zola is a 6/0. Do they really want to play that card? Probably not. That means your Triton's going to at least be a 3/5. So I thought it was pretty interesting. A little bit of information gathering in Marvel Snap without actually knowing exactly what's in your opponent's hands. That was kind of the problem with Spider-Ham for a while, was like you get so much information as to what your opponent's highest cost card is. This is kind of doing it in a roundabout, a little bit more safe way, in my opinion. So anyways, that is my card, but let's get to this week's winners. Number 5, Mangakajones Toxin. All right, so Toxin here is a 6 and -3 power card. Interesting, but when you play Toxin on reveal, destroy your hand, add its total power to this card. So I really love what you've done here. I think it's a great idea. The problem is it's broken. It's so broken in Marvel Snap because essentially what you do is you just make sure that you did, I don't know, all those high power cards, that Infinite that you just never were able to play because you normally with Infinite you got to pass the previous turn. Well, now Toxin's just going to destroy it and eat it all up. Not to mention what you do is you ramp into Null. You play Null early on turn 5, and then you use Toxin on turn 6, destroys everything in your hand. Both your Null get all that power and your Toxin gets all that power, and that is just insane. It's so crazy. Destroying your hand does seem like a huge risk, but I would wager if we were to compare this to Blob, which is why I thought this card was really interesting. Blob's coming out in just a few short days. Draw dependency is going to matter a lot with Blob, right? You got to draw Blob on time. You got to hope that those high power cards are in the deck. Whereas with Toxin, it's all confirmed. You know exactly what power you're going to get when you play Toxin, and it's a lot more controlled because as you're drawing throughout the game, you can choose to not play those cards or play them, depending on if you have Toxin in hand. So yeah, I think this would just be a little bit cracked in a few decks, but really cool. Love the design here. The main art, oh my gosh, looks fantastic. And then these like yellow background, gold background variants look amazing. I love that, especially that bottom one where he's just chomping on. Is that anti-venom? I don't know the lore too well between these cards, but anyways, very cool character. Very cool idea, especially with Blob coming out very soon. But I think it's just a little overtuned. That would be my only thing. And you did put the -3 power here as a way to offset that. But then maybe we look at negative, and maybe that's not even that big of a deal because you have so much power in your hand available that the -3 actually isn't too much of a downside. So I'd be a little bit concerned about the power of this card, but theoretically, it's a neat idea. All right, let's get to number 4. Number 4, KuyaMoMark's Despair. All right, Despair is a 6/2. On reveal, transform your cards that didn't start in your deck into random cards of the same cost. This is really neat. I love this as a finisher because it's a gamble. And especially in Marvel Snap, when we're talking cubes are on the line and you're just going to play Despair, hoping that your tokens, hoping that those cards in your hand and all these sorts of things roll into decent options, that's a really fun line of play, in my opinion. Now, I think what you want to do with the Despair is play it earlier than later, because then if you do have cards in your hand or in your deck, you have an opportunity to draw them and play them. But really, I think the best application and why I have a few options there is Squirrel Girl, Doctor Doom, things that generate tokens. You could even look at Ultron. You play, let's say you play Ultron early and then Despair. That could be an option. The only thing is that it's going to go to a random 1-cost card, so you might not actually get all that much power out of it. But if you use Doctor Doom, Doombots actually have a stat line of 6/5. So they will turn into random 6-cost cards, which hopefully is good. But as we know, there are some 6 costs that have low power. But if it like rolls into, I don't know, Arnim Zola and then hits something else, that could be good too. So there's a lot of really fun, crazy lines of play. That turn 6 would be so wild after you play Despair. And Squirrel Girl is another option you could look at, as well as Brood, right? Summoning those Broodlings. Those are 3 costs. That'd be really good. What else? There's the Mr. Sinister clones. There's White Tiger. The Tiger itself is a 5/8. So that could be a 5-cost card that it transforms into. You'd have to watch out because the Tiger is actually pretty good. And White Tiger herself is not going to change because she started in your deck, but the token did not. So very cool. I know that Kuya here said that she could have put the added line of text of wherever they are. So just to give like further emphasis that the cards in your deck that didn't start there, the cards in your hand, and the cards that you have on the field, like tokens, would all change, which is really fun. What a chaotic, crazy ability. I don't know if it'd be all that competitive because of the RNG aspect of that card, but it'd be a lot of fun. Not to mention there's actually some counter abilities here where you have a Black Widow's Bite in your hand, right? Oh, you don't want that, and then you can switch it to something else. It'd be a zero cost something, but it could still be something more valuable than not allowing you to draw cards. I don't know of too much else. Maybe Sentinels, right, from Master Mold, but even then, it's like Sentinels aren't too bad. Rocks in your deck, but then they're still going to count for Darkhawk. So it's really balanced in my opinion. If anything, I think this would end up being one of the weaker cards, but it'd be way fun. It'd be one of the most fun cards in Marvel Snap, in my opinion. So this was a great idea. I really enjoyed this. And this character looks awesome too. I love what you did with the artwork here. Very great job. Let's go to number 3. Number 3, the artist Chthon. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing this character right, okay? I'm guaranteed it's probably wrong, but Chthon, a 6/0 start of the game, shuffle the Dark Hold, which is right over there, into each deck. Each deck, your deck and your opponent's, ongoing has the power of all corrupted cards in play. So how does a card get corrupted? Well, the Dark Hold is a 1/1, which is in each deck, by the way. While in deck, corrupt a card each turn. Corrupted cards gain +1 power each turn. All right, so I think a lot of people expected this to be number 1 when they saw it because amazing art. Oh my gosh, the artist crushes it, and I love the tentacles, and everything about this card is spooky, evil. It's befitting the character. Theme is on point. Variants, all the stuff. I don't even have all the variants. There were so many amazing variants. This is just a great piece of art. But the reason I put this at number 3 instead is because I think this is so totally broken. So yeah, you put the book in your deck and your opponent's deck. It Darkhawk synergies, these sorts of things. But you're giving +1 power to all the corrupted cards, and each turn a card is getting corrupted in your deck. So there's pretty good chances that your opponent is going to draw a corrupted card or the book, right? I'd say after like 1, 2, 3 turns, it's going to happen. Well, once that happens, your opponent is totally bricked. Like they either play that card knowing that all the power from that card they're going to give to Chthon, or they don't play it, and then they just, I don't know, it's a wasted draw. It's a dead draw. And then if you're the Chthon player, you want to draw your corrupted cards and you want to play them. It's just net gain, net benefits. It could maybe be fair if like both players got a Chthon or something like that. Or I don't know. There's a lot of finicky balancing act here. And that's why sometimes with the custom cards, guys, I try to emphasize keeping it simple because that's more likely to be in Marvel Snap and find a place of balance. When you start to add a lot of conditions kind of like this, it gets tricky. It just gets to be too much for the game to really handle. And I think easily Chthon would end up at like 20 power plus and gave your opponent a bunch of difficult draws and gave your deck a lot of synergies because you could put a bunch of cards that benefit from getting +1 power each turn. Yeah, it's just totally broken. Totally broken. And I apologize for putting 2 cards that I think are totally broken here. And maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below if I'm overthinking these cards and think they're too strong. But I just thought they were really well put together cards, these two, when you look at the full package of theme, art, character, and then, of course, abilities, unique, creative abilities, which they are. This is a very creative idea. It's just a little too strong. Gotta like take one of these things out. Honestly, you could probably take out the fact that the corrupted cards gain +1 power each turn, because that's just too much, I think. A little bit too much. The idea probably being that your opponent benefits from that as well. But there's just no shot because if they'll always be running the risk of playing that card, knowing they might give that power to Chthon, which is a very likely circumstance. So anyways, it's a great card. I love the idea. I love the art. It looks great. It just needs some power tweaking. But let's get to the top 2. Number 2, Nogoalov's Ikaris. All right, I love this card. I love this card. This is such a great idea. I think it's very balanced as well. So you have a 6/14, very nice, clean, and simple. I love this, guys. When drawn, shuffle this back into your deck. That's it. So it's essentially a card that you could just never, ever draw. You can't. He'll just go back in the deck. And actually, the big hindrance here, despite having a premium stat line, is that it's a dead draw. It's not just like going back into the deck and then you draw another card. No, it's like you drew this card, you're not drawing another card. It's going to go back into your deck, which is fantastic when it comes to Blob. right? So we got Blob coming out. He's going to love this card because you want that 14 power in the deck at all times. There's still drawing consistencies because if you have not drawn Blob, you're going to have a real tough time drawing Blob, because if you draw Ikaris 2-3 times in a row, which very well could happen, you're just not drawing cards in this game and you're probably going to retreat. It's going to be very difficult. Now you can cheat out Ikaris, which is probably one of the best ways to do it, and that's use Jubilee or Lockjaw, these sorts of things, to essentially get the card out onto the board before it has an opportunity to be drawn. And I think that's the best course of action when it comes to a card like this. But it's so cool. I love this concept. I think it's great. It actually doesn't work in Hella decks either, because you want a bunch of high power cards in your hand. And you can never get this card into your hand unless you like beasted it. You'd have to bounce it back into your hand or have it go to your hand from random generation, because then it's not drawn. It's not a drawn card. You'd be fine. Oh my goodness. Such a interesting card. Very simple idea, but it works with a few synergies that are actively in Marvel Snap, and I think this would be a very fun card to run for those reasons, especially with Blob. That's just way too good. That's so much fun because you just guarantee your Blob's going to be big. But you got to, again, the draw is going to be difficult. I think it'd make a lot of funny videos where somebody draws this on turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like every single turn, Ikaris just keeps showing up in the hand. Oh my gosh, it'd be such a nightmare. But anyways, Nogoalov, amazing card. I love the idea. I love keeping it simple here, and great artwork as always. So I really appreciate this. I could see this being in Marvel Snap. This is one of those ones where you kind of like pin and you're like, this ability and something along these lines. This could join the game, maybe. Anyways, we got one more to cover. Number one, it's Tim's Dormammu. Dormammu. Yeah, this is a character that needs to join Marvel Snap. Am I right? I feel like everybody keeps saying, where is Dormammu? There's a lot of big villains, actually, that I think that they should be adding to Marvel Snap. But regardless, Dormammu here is a 6/6. When an end of game effect activates, this copies it. I love this, dude. This is so much fun because if we were to look at end of game abilities, okay, so we have M'Baku. This card is never played. This card is trash. But the best part is if you have M'Baku and Dormammu in your deck, the way I understand it, the way Tim has decided as a creative to code this card is that it would be able to register an ability in the deck. It doesn't matter where Dormammu is, he's going to activate his ability, okay, at the end of the game. Let's just set aside current coding and abilities, whatever. This is how this card works, okay? So Dormammu's in the deck, M'Baku's in the deck, boom. He's going to fly out with M'Baku. It's great. This is free 6 power. M'Baku's giving you that 2 power. Boom, there we go. Captain Marvel. If we got Dormammu out on the field and Captain Marvel is out on the field, well, they're both going to look for a place to win the game. Not so great because we know that with 2 Captain Marvels, they don't communicate with each other. So if Dormammu says, I can't win, or actually, in fact, if Captain Marvel says she can't, then Dormammu would trigger second, and then he might not be able to do it either. But maybe that 2 power difference does help. Who knows? Then there's Dracula. Dracula is an end of game effect. He's going to discard a card and set his power to it, which might be good, might be bad. Of course, if Apocalypse is in the hand, then you hit it with Dracula, then you hit it with Dormammu, and Dormammu is going to have a lot of power. So there's a lot of synergy there. But of course, you know, that doesn't always happen, and you have swarms in your hand or something like that, and then you end up with 3 powered Dormammu. So a little bit of a gamble there, but probably pretty good. And then another one that is in the game is Martyr. Fly somewhere to lose the game. And this would be a 6 powered Dormammu trying to lose the game as well. But similar issues as to the Captain Marvel, they don't talk to each other, so maybe it'd work out. Anyways, I think it'd be a lot of fun. There's not a whole lot of end of game effects. And I think it would be interesting every time one comes out, if there was a finisher or a 6-cost card like Dormammu that existed in the game, that'd be like, hey, that could actually have a chance with Dormammu, or not. Or maybe they don't work at all. But it's a pretty interesting idea nonetheless. Anyways, thank you, Tim, and thank you to everyone who submitted a card for this week's challenge. We got the next challenge coming up, the Big Lose Challenge, which, funny enough, Dormammu kind of works with. But he doesn't have that keyword, which is what you're looking for, to put that in the text. And remember, try to keep it simple, thematic, creative, all that good stuff. I love to see it. Let's go. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will catch you guys next time.